and welcome back to my channel where I am revisiting some of my earlier class-related videos. Within this video, we will be advancing our Druid Class character that we created in the previous video. I'm going to cover levels 2 through to level 11 in this video, and then we will cover the remaining levels in a follow-up video closing off the base class for the Druid. I will also be using the character wizard to help me with this leveling process, as it now takes care of many of the additions we would normally have to deal with. This makes things a little easier and will allow me to focus more on the various features directly as opposed to how to go through and configure them. So with that, let's go ahead and begin the process of leveling up this level 1 Druid. At Druid level 2, there are going to be a number of things that will happen. It is at this level where you get to choose the Druid circle your character is going to gain, essentially their class specialization. The other thing is that this happens to be the level where you gain access to your character's wild shape capability, meaning that they can now choose to change into a different kind of beast. Though there are some restrictions, and I will go over those in a moment. The next thing that happens is that you're going to gain an additional spell slot, specifically a level 1 spell slot, which also means that your character can prepare an additional spell due to this level increase. I'm going to go ahead and open up our sub panel here for our class and level details page, and then I'm just going to click this level up button. That's going to bring me to this window here, and all I'm going to do is simply click this up arrow. This is essentially going to be the same process you're going to use every time you level your character, and as soon as you click that up arrow, you're going to have a number of options that will periodically show up. Because I am not going to be cover any of the specializations in this video, it doesn't really matter which of these two that I take, and for now I'm just going to select that one. Before I move on, I'm going to go ahead and select our spell. And we're gaining one additional level 1 spell here. I already have Cure Wounds, Entangle, Fairy Fire, Purify Food and Drink, and Thunder Wave, so I just need one more. I'm going to go with Healing Word. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and commit this change. With respect to spellcasting, as you can see, we can select our spells as we level our character up through that character wizard. Make things a little bit easier for us to go through and figure out because our previous selection of spells is there as part of that panel. And then you can just go ahead and choose the new one that you want to add and add it as you need to. However, in order for you to be able to use the spell, you still need to go ahead and prepare it. So as you can see here, the one that we added is still set as unprepared. So you just want to make sure that you go ahead and prepare that spell before you do anything else. However, because we are on the topic of spellcasting, there are a few points of clarification that I want to make at this point because from now on, it's generally more relevant than it had been at level 1. Much like clerics, technically a druid will quote-unquote know all of the spells that are available to them, and that is due to their connection with their gods. And if you think about it, a druid interacts with their gods more like a cleric does rather than how a wizard does. Druids will pray and meditate during long rests in order to prepare their spells for the day, and because of this, they can choose to swap out what spells they have prepared once that prayer and meditation process is complete. What this means for you as the player is that this gives you the opportunity to change out your spells that you're planning on using for the following sessions, and it gives you a high degree of flexibility because of that. The only restriction is that your character must have completed that long rest and the party or your own character hasn't left their quote-unquote rest location just yet. Ideally, you want that done before you start to head out for the day. Additionally, while druids do have a few spells that are ritualistic in nature at level 1, just one second here, I'm going to load up our ritual spells. So for example, Detect Magic here. There's generally a good chance, however, that no one is going to take these spells at level 1. Thus, you're not really going to understand how to properly use them just yet. Most of the players that I've been involved with usually take spells that are going to allow them to survive by dealing with damage or putting up protections of some kind, not detections of any kind or anything else like that. So generally when you're dealing with ritual spells, it's extremely rare that as a level 1 character, you're going to take that particular type of spell. But because it is something that your character can do, we need to explain how to use them. And this is how a ritual spell essentially works. You have the option of casting it as an action, but you also have the option of casting it through a ritual process, which means that you're going to add 10 minutes to the duration that that particular spell takes to cast. And when you do that, you get to cast that spell without expending a particular spell slot. This gives you as a player the option to either choose to burn through a spell slot to actually cast the spell as an action, that you would normally do during a combat-based situation, or if you're wandering through a particular dungeon and you don't have time to actually spend that 10 minutes casting the detect magic spell. Or if you do have that time, you can simply spend 10 minutes, cast that spell, and you don't burn that spell slot. Most dungeon masters aren't going to add the 1 or 2 seconds to the total time that you're going to spend casting it if you're taking the time to cast this particular spell as a ritual. And that's because it's a relatively small element of that particular spell going forward. However, if there is a spell that has a much longer duration with respect to that casting time, be it a minute or be it 10 minutes or 20 minutes already, and you're going to use it as a ritual, you're going to add 10 minutes to whatever that time takes. So if the normal casting time for that spell is 1 minute, then your total casting time is going to be 11 minutes. And one last point of confusion that I want to clear up with respect to ritual spells is that you don't lose the prepared state of that spell when you cast it as a ritual. It remains prepared, and that is sort of the other condition, is that you can only actually cast spells that are prepared as ritual spells. Now, if you're unsure what tag is required to denote whether there is a spell that is a ritual spell or not, that's actually fairly easy. It's right here on the spell's information card. It's going to have in brackets ritual after this level 1, and then the school or level 2, and then whatever school that you're going to see there. You will always see this ritual in brackets after that. With respect to the wild shape feature, as we indicated earlier in this section, your character is gaining the ability to magically change into any natural beast as an action. And while this process is magical in nature, you're not going to be expending any spells to do it. While I was writing the script for this video, it became obvious that this feature was going to take up a huge portion of this particular video, and I really wanted to try to keep this within my 20-minute time frame that I was aiming for. And yes, I know I still missed, but I got it much closer had I kept most of the details about wild shape in this particular video. As a result of that, I'm going to cover the setup and the use of this feature in this video, but I'm also going to provide a far more in-depth video that covers the feature in greater detail. There's a lot of information to impart with respect to this feature. And the reason why I've done that is you might already understand how the wild shape feature works, but there's a good chance that you're watching this video to get a simple example as to how to go and set it up and add it to your character sheet and how it can be used, as you're in the middle of the game and you don't really want to take too much time to learn any other details specific to this feature. However, at the same time, I still feel it is important to go into this feature in as much detail as possible because it is a very key aspect of a Druid class. The setup of the feature itself is extremely simple, however, its use is a little bit more complicated as to how it functions. And as you can see, I've simply drag and dropped this into our character sheet. I'm then going to modify this so that it's in a group that will become useful a little bit later on. If there's any additional features that the Druid class is going to add, we want it to fall into this particular category. Once it's added, the very first thing that we are going to want to do is ensure that it has 2 uses, and it's set up that we need to use it between short and long rests, because you can regain this when your character completes a short rest as well as a long rest. We can then go ahead and clear out these 3 effects here. They do not apply to this feature at all. However, what I am going to do is add a new effect to this particular feature, and it's really primarily informational in nature. And I'm going to call it something like this. The creature tag itself should be changed into the name of the creature that you intend to be able to shapeshift into. In this case, I'm going to set it as a wolf just so that you have an example. And I highly recommend that you ensure the name you enter here matches that of the creature that is going to be listed within the NPC listing here. And the reason why is it's going to make it much easier with respect to the DM finding the creature that you're planning on changing into, because the DM is going to have to dig it out and do a couple of things with it, and you'll see what that looks like when we go through the use case. I also suggest that you create one for every single creature that your character has seen that you know you're able to change into. I'm going to go into those in just a moment. But the reason why is it allows you to track those kinds of creatures that your character's familiar enough with to be able to switch into them. And I will show you what you will have for the list of creatures at this level here in a second. But before I do anything else, I want to quickly modify this for one other minor change, and that's to actually set this up for its duration, which is 1 hour. And I go into great detail as to how that is calculated in the companion video. With respect to those creatures, your character has the ability to use a quarter and lower with respect to their challenge rating. You can sort through that by selecting the challenge rating here and ensuring that you select Beast as the type. Not all of these creatures are going to be available to you, and I go into great detail as to which ones you actually get to use in the companion video, but I'm just giving you a quick summary right now as to the 3 challenge rating groups that you can use with respect to what your character is going to be able to start with. And those are going to be challenge rating 0, 1/8, and 1/4. You cannot use any from the half or the challenge rating 1 values just yet, though you do gain that ability a bit later on. And the reason why I set this to self is simply to make it a lot easier for me to just simply click this icon here so that it automatically will find and add the feature itself to my character in the combat tracker and not to anyone else's character. But with that said, let's go and now show you how you can use this particular feature. When a druid is going to make use of the wild shape feature, the DM is going to have to do a little bit of prep work when it comes to actually making that creature available to you for control. The first is that the Dungeon Master is going to have to find that particular creature with respect to the available beasts and open up the player's handbook version of it or whatever supplement is available at the time that you are switching into that character. They then need to drag and drop that particular creature into the combat tracker. The next thing that they have to do is update the faction to represent something that is friendly to the party. So in this case, it's going to be faction friend with respect to that configuration. Once they have done that, they're going to need to pick up this icon over here and drop that over top of the portrait that represents your character. And yes, I know I switched portraits mid-video. It's because I realized that when I re-imported my character, it had changed the portrait on me, so I apologize for that. As soon as I drop that onto the portrait, you'll see that the Dungeon Master screen is going to get an instantiated copy of that creature. However, at exactly the same time, the player is also going to gain a copy of that creature. And the reason it has to be done this way is because this is the only location where that creature is instantiated, meaning that when it's added to the combat tracker, behind the scenes, that creature is actually created in a way that is usable. Simply dragging and dropping a creature directly from the NPC list onto the player's quote-unquote portrait isn't going to always work. And in fact, I don't think it actually does anymore. And with this creature now shared to you from a player's point of view, you will now have control over what this creature can do. And that control extends to things like movement, being able to target a hostile NPC, being able to attack and do damage to that NPC, also making use of the saving throws and ability score checks here, as well as any skill checks that have to be used. However, in order for you as a player to be able to control that creature on a map, the Dungeon Master is going to have to be able to enable the setting Party Vision and Movement. Otherwise, you're not going to have any level of control over the creature here. You're only going to be able to use the features within the character sheet. That setting is found underneath the tokens option there, and you can see here if I shrink this down, I currently have Party Vision and Movement turned off. And because of that, I have no control over this particular icon. If I try to move this, it doesn't allow me to do it. All it does is it allows me to drag the map around, which is not what we want. If I change that so that the setting is on, now what I can do is I can actually select that icon and move it around as I need to. It also allows me to more or less place this on top of my character if I wanted to. Give me a second here to allow the Dungeon Master to accept that. In order to hide the fact that my character and the wolf are essentially the same creature. Both your character and the wolf character that you assumed here are going to be in the combat tracker. And that has to be in order for your character to take actions that would be things like skill checks or abilities and features that exist on your character sheet versus the wolf's information sheet. When it's your turn, technically what the Dungeon Master is going to have to do is set it up so that it's actually your wild shape form that goes, not your own character. And this way you can actually go through and target a particular creature from the point of view of that wolf. In order for you to actually make use of and attack that particular wolf, so let's say I wanted to move this down to there, obviously your character is not going to move around, it's only going to be your wolf token that moves around in this particular case. You'll be able to make use of these actions here. You won't have any options here that you can choose from, as this is essentially going to be your quote-unquote wild shapes character sheet. You have these capabilities here as well as features, and I go into much more detail as to what you get to use and see here in the companion video. But ideally, what you'll want to do is make your bite-based attack, and all you have to do once you have the creature targeted is simply double-click like you would normally with your own character sheet. And you could theoretically also drag and drop it out and drop that into place. So if we want to attack the Archmage here, for example, it's not on the map, but right now that capability is there for me to do so. I can just simply drag and drop onto whatever creature I'm targeting. Now, I went through and my bite did not connect with the wolf, I don't think. No, it was missed. So that's not a problem. But let's say, for example, that I did hit. What I could then do is either drag and drop that directly onto the icon on the map to do damage. I can double click that wolf, or the damage there, in order to do the damage to the wolf, because I already have them targeted. Or I can drag and drop into the combat tracker. So there's a number of options here that come into play, but they also have a saving throw. You can actually force that saving throw simply by double clicking here. So any text that you see that's highlighted is something that you can generally click on in order to actually have it done, but it's got to be double clicked. However, the Dungeon Master has to enable a setting in order for you to see the results within the combat tracker. I think it's the allies rolls that you will actually see here. With respect to the saving throw, our wolf failed because it's already dying. So I'm going to roll this against wolf 2. So let's say that I had attacked and didn't so badly damage wolf 2. In this particular case, they succeeded, and that's because I enabled the setting. So if later on I attack and do damage again and force them to save, now there is a failure. I wanted that to fail because now what I can do is I can drop this prone effect on top of wolf 2. And that will tell Fantasy Grounds from that point forward that until that wolf stands up, they are now prone, so attack rolls against it are going to have advantage if it's melee based. Now, one of the more common questions that I get asked is what happens if I accidentally close that particular creature sheet? How do I as a player get that back? Well, there are two ways that can have that happen. The first, and it's the easiest, is you simply double click on the wolf to regain access to the creature. As long as that creature is shared with you, you will be able to do that. The other option is that the Dungeon Master just goes and reshares it to you again, much like they did prior. This is useful if you accidentally closed this out, or combat hadn't completed before you ended the previous session, and you're now coming back and completing that particular session in another game, and finishing off this particular combat scenario. You can always go ahead and just double click that to regain access to the character and to the wolf, and then you're good to go. But beyond that, whenever you're in your wild shape form, you will always use the actions that are available within this particular information sheet here. And there are some other things that you also gain advantages to with respect to these traits and whatnot as well. So you'll want to watch the companion video to get a better understanding of exactly what you gain access to with respect to these features here versus what would normally be available through your character sheet. At Druid level 3, your character is going to gain access to 1 new first level spell slot, in addition to 2 new second level spell slots, as well as being able to access level 2 spells. You can see that within the spell slots per spell level table here, if you will, and you'll want to look at this row here. However, there's one thing that I want to point out. Even though you're gaining 2 level 2 spell slots, you're not gaining the ability to choose and prepare 2 level 2 spells. You're only still able to add 1 newly prepared spell to your preparation list. All this really means is that you're gaining access to any of the level 1 and level 2 spells that you have already prepared, in addition to the 1 new spell that you can add to your character sheet, versus just having access to level 1 spells. You're still being restricted on how many spells you can prepare and cast, as well as what level that can be. So very quickly, I'm going to go ahead and level this character up so that you can see what that looks like. And that's as complicated as it is. We still need to go in and prepare that spell, but beyond that, there's nothing else that we're going to be required to do at this level. At Druid level 4, your character is going to gain access to 1 more level 2 spell slot. You're also gaining access to your first ability score improvement, in addition to a cantrip and an improvement with their wild shape feature. With respect to the ability score improvement, and because this is the first time that we're seeing this, I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like. As soon as you add level 4, you're going to gain access to this prompt here. If you want to take an ability score improvement where you're increasing a stat, you're going to want to choose ASI. However, if you want to choose a feat, which I'm not going to do it this turn, I'll do it a little bit later on in the video, you can actually click on this button here and then go to the feats option and select a feat from that list. In this case, I want to show what an ASI improvement looks like. As soon as you select that, you have to go back to the stats option here, and then you can choose a couple of things. There are going to be two options available to you. The first is to select a single stat and increase that stat by 2. You can see that our wisdom score went up by 2 points. If I was to commit this change now, that would be all I would gain. However, that would be one of the legitimate selections. The second option, however, is that I actually can select another ability and have both of those abilities increase by 1 point each. So here you can see that our wisdom score has gone up by 1 point, but so has our constitution, because those were the two abilities that I chose. I actually don't want to increase my constitution at this particular point in time. Instead, I just simply want to bump my wisdom score up by 2 points. But if you have chosen the ability score improvement over a feat selection, that is the two options that you have available to you. And all I then have to do is go and select my spells. Now, there's one thing I did intentionally here. I've intentionally selected the wisdom stat because there's another important factor that you need to take into account when you're choosing spells. If you recall, a druid prepares their spells based on a combination of the level and their wisdom modifier. In this case, we increased our wisdom modifier and our level by 1 point each. That means we actually do get to choose 2 spells here that we can go through and add to our character sheet. And this is one of the few times where you can actually go and do that. If your level goes up by 1 point and you manage to gain an increment in your wisdom score modifier at the same time, you do get the ability to select an additional spell because you now have the ability to prepare an additional spell because of that change. And remember, a druid does not work like a wizard does with respect to their spells. They don't copy spells into a spell book. They work far more like a cleric does, in the sense that all they do is they talk to their god and figure out what spells they want to cast for the day. Think of it as you're asking your god, hey, can I see the menu of spells that I have available to me? All right, I'm going to choose this one, and then you're done. On top of that, we also gain access to a new cantrip on this level. So I'm going to go ahead and select an additional cantrip, which in this particular case, I'm going to take Guidance. And then I'm going to choose 2 level 2 spells. One is going to be Moonbeam, and the other is going to be Spike Growth. And with all of that done, I can now commit this change, and I will see all of these changes on our character sheet. We can see that Guidance has now been added here, and we now have Moonbeam and Spike Growth. The final thing to do is to prepare each of these, and we do gain the ability to prepare both of these because of that increase with respect to our Wisdom modifier and the increase to our level. With respect to the Wild Shape feature, there are now 3 things that have happened. The first is that we're gaining access to 1/2 CR based creatures. This means that we can now use 0, 1/8, 1/4, and 1/2 challenge rating based creatures. And this opens up the door to be able to use the Black Bear and the Warhorse for creatures. The second is that we can now select creatures that have a swimming trait, adding the following beasts as options for your character to be able to use: frogs, poisonous snakes, constrictor snakes, crocodiles, and reef sharks. And the last thing that we have to change is to ensure that our duration has increased. So we go from 1 hour to 2 hours with respect to this change. And you will notice a trend as we move forward that for every even level, this is going to go up by 1 point. If your character has seen any of those particular creatures that I just listed, now is a great time to go through and make sure that you add a copy of this particular effect capability, if you will, to this particular wild shape feature so that you can keep track of what creatures you have seen, thus being able to unlock what creatures you can actually switch into. At Druid level 5, your character is gaining access to their first grouping of 3rd level spell slots. In this case, you're gaining 2 spell slots, and the means to prepare and gain those particular spells. Additionally, there's also an increase in our proficiency score here, but we don't really have to change anything, as that's going to happen for us automatically when we go through and level this character up. And because I want to go through and actually select my spells through the leveling up process, I'm going to actually run through the character wizard to do that. So I'm going to increase this. There's nothing else that changes. However, now I have unlocked level 3 spell slots. I'm going to go ahead and choose 1 spell. In this case, I'm going to select Sleet Storm. And finally, I'm going to go and prepare that level 3 spell slot. At Druid level 6, your character will gain access to a circle-specific feature, 1 additional level 3 spell slot, the means to prepare another spell, and an increase in the duration of the wild shape feature. As I am covering circle-specific features in other videos, I won't be going over that here. So for now, let's just deal with the remaining few adjustments. And to complete that, I'm going to go ahead and just simply make use of the character wizard as I have thus far. And then I'm going to go ahead and make an adjustment to this wild shape feature here. And finally, I just need to prepare that spell. At Druid level 7, your character is going to gain access to one new level 4 spell slot, as well as the means to prepare an additional spell. As that is really the only change that happens here, let's just go ahead and take care of that. And finally, I'm going to make sure that that gets prepared. At Druid level 8, your character is going to gain their last adjustment with respect to the wild shape feature. An additional feat or ability score improvement, depending on what you choose. An additional level 4 spell slot, and the means to prepare another spell. So let's go ahead and level our character up, and I'm going to show you what happens when you choose a feat this time during the leveling up here. First, I'm going to go ahead and select feat. I am then going to select the feats tab at the top there, and this will be the optional list of feats here. It might be longer depending on how many supplements the Dungeon Master has allowed you to load up. But in this particular case, because I'm not going to go over the details of this particular feat, I'm simply going to select Spell Sniper because it would be useful for our character to have it. I am then going to go ahead and select my spell, and in this particular case, I'm going to add Stone Skin. There we go. Now, before I move on to the wild shape changes, I'm going to go ahead and prepare the spell, and then open up the wild shape feature so that we can see what changes here. In this particular case, once again, there are 3 changes that have occurred. The first is that you can now have the ability to use challenge rating 1 based creatures. And this includes all of the beasts that we can change into up till now. So everything from 0 all the way through to 1. This will add the brown bear, dire wolf, giant spider, lion, and tiger to your list of optional beasts. The second change is that we have now unlocked the ability to select flying based creatures. And that is going to include the bat, hawk, owl, raven, and giant eagle. And finally, we are going to have an increase in the duration with respect to wild shape. So we go from 3 to 4 hours. At Druid level 9, our character is gaining access to level 5 spell slots, the means to add another prepared spell, and an increase in our character's proficiency bonus. So let's go ahead and level our character up just so that you can see what that looks like. I am then going to go ahead and prepare that spell. At Druid level 10, our character is gaining access to another level 5 spell slot, the means to prepare another spell, access to another cantrip, a new circle feature, and an increase to the duration of our wild shape feature. So let's go ahead and level this character up from level 9 to 10. You can see here that even though our cantrips here hasn't increased, we are gaining the ability to choose one here. I don't know why this hasn't increased here, but it is something that we can do. So just be cognizant of that. I'm going to go ahead and, in this particular case, add Thorn Whip, because right now I don't actually have any combat-based cantrips available to me. I am then going to go ahead and add Conjure Elemental to our spell selection. And finally, I just need to make sure that I prepare that spell, and that I modify the duration that wild shape itself can now remain active. At Druid level 11, our character is gaining access to our first set of level 6 spell slots, and the means to add another prepared spell. So let's go ahead and level our character up. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually prepare this spell. And that is actually going to complete all of the levels that we're going to cover in detail with respect to this video. If you haven't already done so, I encourage you to watch the Wild Shape video where I go into a lot more detail about how that feature works, because there are a lot of questions that a lot of players are going to have, and I try to do my best to make sure that I answer them in that video. I hope you found this video useful and informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.